Ribbons are a really interesting piece of Pokemon history. They functioned as sort of special rewards for playing in contests or speaking to NPCs, little side things you might not pay attention to if you were only trying to beat the game. Nowadays, they also give special titles to your Pokemon, and serve as a neat little reminder of the adventures you've been through together. Like almost anything collectible, there are people who go out of their way to get every single possible ribbon throughout the 6 generations they've existed. Pokemon who have every ribbon they're capable of earning are called Ribbon Masters. My name is Stella, and this is the story of how I got my own. I was first introduced to the concept of ribbon mastering by another YouTuber, Sir Toasty Toes. He's made a number of ribbon masters and documented the process in his videos. I'll make sure to link his channel below, along with any resources I ended up using. I mostly used the website ribbons.guide to help track what I had and how many I still needed, along with some help from Bulbapedia, of course. When it came to picking what Pokemon should be my ribbon master, there was an easy choice. For a long time, Ho-Oh was the shiny hunt I was doing. I'd often be hanging out at events or sitting on public transport and resetting at the bell tower in Heart Gold the whole time. I'm not sure exactly how long I was hunting it on and off, but when I found it in February of 2025, I theorized that it had been over 4 years, since the Smeargle I got for this hunt was hatched in December of 2020. Shiny Ho-Oh was the obvious choice for me to commemorate the time and effort I'd put into it. The only problem? I don't like transferring my full-odd shinies out of their original games. There's just something about the sprite work and the design that's special to me. So I needed some way to get a shiny Ho-Oh in the older games that wouldn't take me 4 years. I decided to do an RNG manipulation in Leaf Green through the Naval Rock event. I have a little bit experience with the Gen 3 manips, though not in these games specifically. I still wanted to challenge myself at least a little bit, and there's something unique to Fire Red Leaf Green that the other games don't have. The RNG actually works as intended. In the Hoenn games, you almost always start from the same seed. This applies to Ruby and Sapphire if you have a dead internal battery, which you almost certainly do if you haven't replaced it, and every single copy of Emerald. This is great for RNG manipulation, since it means you always know where you're starting from. You only need to time your button press once when you actually encounter the Pokemon. In Fire Red and Leaf Green, you don't have this luxury. Simplifying things somewhat, the seeding in these games is decided by what button you press on the title screen and when. This means to manipulate the RNG in the Kanto games, you need to hit not 1, but 2 frame-perfect button presses. I somehow managed to hit the correct seed on my very first attempt, but getting them both together took some real time and effort. After over 4 hours of encounters, split over the course of a couple play sessions, I was able to find my target. As a bonus, since we were manipulating, I was able to get a Ho-Oh who will have the square sparkles in Sword and Shield, which is a little rarer for transferred Pokemon. I personally think it looks better, so I was happy to put in that little bit of extra effort to find it. Now you might be wondering why there's only one ribbon listed here, in the very generation that introduced the mechanic. Unfortunately, I don't have any way to trade between GBA games, and I do not have the money to buy another Game Boy and Link cable. This means we're limited to the one and only ribbon that can be attained in the Gen 3 Kanto games, the Champion ribbon. If you prefer, you can just pretend we're starting in Gen 4 with a bonus ribbon, because we basically are. After a little bit of level grinding, since I'd only just finished the Sevi Islands on this save, I was able to defeat the Elite Four in Blue with their rematch teams, granting Sunrise the Champion ribbon. Afterwards, it's a simple matter of transferring them up to Heart Gold, along with the little entourage who'll be joining them through the generations. There are a lot of ribbons in Gen 4, but only one we actually care about here in the Johto region. At the top of Mount Silver, we find Red, who disappears mysteriously once beaten, granting us the Legend ribbon. This is the ribbon I'm going to be using for Sunshine's title once those are introduced, because honestly there's very little that can top the living legend. With our work in Heart Gold done, it's time to move across to Sinnoh, where we have the highest number of ribbons to obtain in the whole series. It was already pretty late at night, so I wasn't going to be getting any more ribbons today, but I did make a point to stop by the house of a nice lady named Julia in Sunyshore, and promise to tell her some stories. We'll be seeing her a lot over the next couple days. The next morning, I talk to Julia, and she gives Sunrise the Alert ribbon. They're the first of 7 ribbons she can give, one for each day of the week. Next, I head over to Veilstone to increase our contest stats. Now, there's something really important to know if you're doing contests in this generation. You can only feed a Pokemon a certain number of Poffins. Once their Sheen stat is maxed out, they will never eat another. I had tried making Poffins with my girlfriend earlier, but failed miserably, so I'm following a guide on the Pokemon Ribbon subreddit that uses the store-bought ones, along with the impossibly good mild Poffin you only get once per save. Like everything else, I'll leave a link in the description. It's not enough to max out our contest stats, but it gets pretty close, and it's good enough for our needs. With that done, I head over to the contest hall and I start attempting cool contests. With our near max stats, and the scarves that boost the visual score further, we only really need to worry about sticking as many theme-appropriate accessories on Ho-Oh as possible before the dancing and acting competition. I generally suck at rhythm games, but the scores from the other two sections are more than enough to make up for it. Since there's no real penalty for using moves of the wrong contest type, the acting competition basically just involves getting as high a score as possible, and hoping your opponents don't screw you over. That evening, I'm able to win every cool contest, and all the beauty contests except Master Rank, which I leave for later. Tuesday morning, I grabbed the Shock Ribbon from Julia while watching Absolblog's Pokemon Surprise Trade Gauntlet, and making a few trades of my own. I also finished the non-Master Rank versions of the Cute, Smart, and Tough contests, since they were less reliant on the rhythm game section, and I could complete them fairly easily while also watching the stream. That evening, I flew over to the resort area and visited the Ribbon Syndicate, was able to buy the gorgeous and royal ribbon. They offered me another ribbon, but I couldn't afford it, seeing as it was the game's actual money cap. As anyone would do in this situation, I went and beat up the most powerful trainers in the region, while my Pokemon held the Amulet Coin, conveniently getting Sunrise the Sinnoh Champion ribbon in the process. This was pretty time consuming, all things considered, so for the rest of the day, I instead beat up an old couple, which was much easier and quickly earned me the money I needed. The next day, Julia gave us the Downcast ribbon, and then we headed to the resort area to get the gorgeous royal ribbon. It's very funny to look at my trainer card and see exactly 0 Pokédollars. I think it's the only time something like this has happened in one of my games. Now it's time to head back to the contest hall for some of those Master Rank contests. Have I mentioned yet that I really struggle with rhythm games? Thank goodness it's all behind us now, and I'll never have to deal with something like that again. I didn't mention it earlier, but this whole time I've been trying to increase Sunrise's friendship for a ribbon. The very act of winning contests has been doing it, and I've also been going to the 2 daily massages in the game to complete it. Since it's one of the only ribbons left in this generation, it's time to get those last few points of friendship by biking up and down Cycling Road repeatedly. While it's not much for a bonding exercise, it is enough to get us the Footman ribbon, since Ho-Oh thinks I'm really cool and awesome. I was pretty busy on Thursday, so I just grabbed the Careless ribbon from Julia before transferring Sunrise up through Black 2. I know it's been less than a full week, but we're able to grab the other ribbons we need later in the series. There aren't any ribbons at all in the Unova games, but we can at least admire Ho-Oh's funny animation before moving them up to Omega Ruby. Unfortunately, I don't own a 3DS capture card, so I'll be kind of breezing through these next few sections. Hopefully you don't mind the shaky phone camera too much. The only thing I'm doing today is feeding Sunrise a few Pokeblocks to max out their contest stats, now that Sheen isn't a relevant stat anymore. In the morning, I visited Morville City for the Relaxed ribbon, since it's the new place for the daily ribbons in this game. I beat the Elite Four for the Hoenn Champion ribbon, then did what is, in my opinion, one of the weirdest minigames in the series, Super Trading. As much as I do not care for it, I was able to get it through it fairly quickly, earning the Effort ribbon and the Trading ribbon. On Saturday, I grabbed the Snooze ribbon and completed all 5 Master Rank contests. They're a lot more straightforward in this game than the earlier titles, and didn't end up giving me any trouble. On Sunday, it was time for the last of the weekly ribbons, the Smile ribbon. That's every ribbon we needed for Hoenn, so I traded Sunrise across to X and earned the Kalos Champion ribbon. That evening, while on call with my friends, we move up to Ultra Moon. Alola is very straightforward. Since Ho-Oh is banned from the Super Rank at the Battle Tree, we only need to obtain the Alola Champion ribbon from the Elite Four, and the Battle Tree Great ribbon for beating Blue. While I'm in the region, I also pick up the Best Friends ribbon, since it's very easy to max out affection in this game, with only a couple of Rainbow Pokebeans. With that done, it's time for the Switch games, and thankfully the end of my less than stellar camera work. Moving across to Shield, we can host a tournament in Winden, and upon winning, we're given the Galar Champion ribbon. The only other ribbon left in this game is the Tower Master ribbon, earned by, you guessed it, winning against Leon at Master Rank in the Battle Tower. I hadn't really interacted with the tower much at all, but after a few hours of work I was able to move from Great to Master Rank, completing all the ribbons in Galar. Unfortunately, Ho doesn't exist in Legends Arceus, meaning the Hisui ribbon is impossible for us to get. This means our next game is... oh no. I really do not understand the idea behind these contests. What if we removed the depth from the various categories and instead made the whole thing a simpler but harder version of the rhythm game? Thankfully, they share most of their ribbons with Auras, meaning I only need to complete one Master Rank contest here. The only problem? This contest is incredibly difficult. Even with maxed contest stats and one of the best moves available, I can't win unless I have only a couple misses through the entire minigame. And to make matters worse, I haven't done the Stark Mountain storyline, which means that to even slightly increase my visual score, I would need to do the entirety of that, then beat Cynthia 2 additional times. I decided it was probably better for my own sake if I just continued to try and beat the rhythm game, instead of putting myself through that. With a little bit of effort, and the recommendation from people online that I attempted in handheld mode, I finally obtained the Twinkling Star ribbon. Now Scarlet and Violet are kind of unique in terms of ribbons, since they implemented a few marks that fill similar roles. Now Sword and Shield also had marks, but they were only on newly caught Pokemon, not obtainable after the fact. In contrast, there are 5 marks you can get on an older Pokemon in Paldea: the Mini or Jumbo mark, the Item Finder mark, the Gourmet mark, and the Partner mark. The Mini and Jumbo mark relate to the size mechanic introduced in the Switch games. This one is literally just a roll of the dice, given to Pokemon that are either the minimum or the maximum possible size. Sunrise didn't end up being either of these, so we miss out on them. The Item Finder mark is pretty straightforward. Every time you pick up an item, there's a 1 in 100 chance for it to be granted to the lead Pokemon in your party. As you can guess, this didn't cause too much trouble. The Gourmet mark has a roughly 1 in 33 chance to be granted to any Pokemon in your party after making a sandwich or buying a pre-made meal. Again, pretty straightforward. The Partner mark? Well, we'll get to it. After all, these games do still have some traditional ribbons. The first one we're going for is the Master Rank ribbon, earned for, if you can believe it, winning a match in Master Rank. I was able to reach Master Rank with a rental team shortly before Champions released, so it was a simple matter of finding a Regulation I team with a Ho-Oh on it, copying it as closely as I was able, and then finding someone else on the rank ladder and win against them. Nice and simple. I'll include the paste I used in the description below. Our last proper ribbon comes from winning the Academy Ace tournament, which I entered with the team I'd just been using. I did make the silly mistake of removing their items and not realizing it until it was too late, but it still wasn't too difficult regardless. With the Paldea Champion ribbon now in our hands, there's only one more mark we need to get. The Partner mark is an interesting one in the context of this challenge. Every 10,000 steps, if a Pokemon has over 200 friendship, you have a 1 in 100 chance for your Pokemon to get the mark. This is clearly intended as an organic reward for carrying Pokemon alongside you on your journey. Unfortunately, that takes a really long time, so we're brute forcing it instead. By looping your Joy-Con sticks together with a hair tie, you can set yourself going around in a circle in the middle of the olive rolling field. I used one of my old Joy-Cons from my Switch one, just to make sure I didn't accidentally give myself controller drift. I left it going overnight, and checked the results in the morning. After 2 straight nights spinning around, we finally got the Partner mark. This means Sunrise has obtained every single mark and ribbon it's possible for it to get, if you ignore those Gen 3 Hoenn ones we couldn't access. Overall, that comes to 52 ribbons and 3 marks, though it only displays as 33 in-game, since the Gen 4 contest ribbons get combined into the contest memory ribbon when moved up. This was a really fun experience, and I definitely recommend it if you're interested, especially if there's a Pokemon you have a strong emotional connection with that you want to commemorate. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Goodbye!